Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Control+M Presents, our bi-weekly sharing of Plex tips and tricks. Today, our own Veronica Meyer is going to step in for Jen Berry, who couldn't join us today. Veronica has been working for us since 2019, and she has been a wonderful addition to our team. She's a Plex accredited developer, which means she can write reports against live data, which is pretty cool. And it's not just reporting she's awesome at, she's great at EDI, which I can barely spell, as well as a ton of other modules like production and tooling. She's picked up her Plex experience by working at a number of Plex customers. Like they say, she knows a lot because she's seen a lot. So Veronica, I'm going to mute myself, take it away, and let's teach everyone all about burst reporting.
Thank you, Patty, and hello, everyone. Welcome to Control+M Presents IntelliPlex and Burst Reporting. As Patty said, the session today is being recorded and it's going to be added to our YouTube channel later this afternoon. You'll find it there along with our library of other Plex training presentations. If you want a copy of this training deck, please contact Jill or myself and we'll make sure you get a copy. So I'll be explaining how to use burst reporting using the IntelliPlex module in Plex. IntelliPlex is the same in Classic and UX, so this session is for anybody. For this session, you should already be familiar with creating and scheduling reports in IntelliPlex. If you'd like a refresher on that, you can go to our YouTube channel. Not that this is a plug for us again, but there's a session out there called Introduction to IntelliPlex that you can use. I'll be showing you two different views of how to use the burst feature. I'll explain how those options can help resolve some scheduled reporting issues you may be having. There's going to be a demo as well as some of the out-of-the-box scenarios to get your creative juices flowing. In case you're wondering what a specialized report is, let's say that you've got a daily schedule report set up to go to a team member. Some days that report may have no data, so the recipient will receive a blank report. And this is causing questions like, hey, is there a mistake in that written report? Why am I receiving a blank report? Hey, why there's no transactions to report? So a specialized report can help send those blank reports. Our first scenario will be bursting by a specific value for a specific recipient. This type of reporting is where you can send a report or part of a report to one or more people by pulling out specific criteria, otherwise known as burst values. You use this instead of writing a separate report for each instant and/or each recipient. If you currently have reports that go to your team or team members, and they don't really need all the information on the report, and they just need specific information that pertains only to them, this would be the option to use. They'll end up receiving a condensed report that will only have their information. This alleviates the need for them to weed through a long report looking for what they're interested in. You start with a report you already have written that lists everything for everybody, but your recipient only wants to see certain information from that report. They don't want to see the entire report. Instead of creating separate reports for each instance, like a territory or a person, we can burst that specific section from the full report. When you're bursting a tabular report, such as in this case, your criteria will be in the first by field of your report, which is also known as, there's your first by field, also becomes the first column in your report. If you want to burst a chart, your burst criteria would be the second by field, and it would be the second column in your chart. To start, you want to choose a report that you have already created and that you want to use for bursting. You want to verify that your first column is your burst criteria to be used. So in this instance, I have a report. My first column has my user names in it. This will be the information that I use in my distribution or that I burst to it, so that this ID would only get this information, et cetera, et cetera. Once you've established which report you'll be using, your burst value and who you want the report to be sent to, you'll then create a new distribution list according to who you want to send what to. To create the distribution list, you'll right-click in your folder, So you're in IntelliPlex, you've seen your folders there, you've got your report. Go back to your main folder, not within your report, right-click it, and choose New, and then choose Distribution List. The Members tab is where you'll be entering the title of your new distribution list. I usually name it the same as my report, and I select the method of email. To add what you're bursting on and the recipient's email addresses you want it to go to, you'll hit the Add New tab. Take note that the burst values are case sensitive, and you can add multiple email addresses to each burst value. You can see here that I've added 2 email addresses to the burst value of Cape Hope, and there's 1 email address assigned to the burst value of Patty Novak. When I'm setting up a burst report, I always test by sending it to myself first to verify that the correct information is pulling in. After I verify that the report is correct, then I can go back to the distribution list and I update the email recipients. Save and close your new distribution list, and be aware that your distribution list has publishing and security features just as your reports do. So you want to right-click at, make sure that you have published it and that your security is set up correctly. This list will have a different icon in your folder so that you can tell at a glance what's a report, what's a schedule, and what's a distribution list. Notice that your distribution list has this little cute truck icon. Now that we've created the distribution list, we'll create a schedule to tell IntelliPlex where we want the report to distribute it. You'll right-click on your report, not in the folder, and then you're going to create a schedule by right-clicking and then selecting email. The difference between a regular schedule and one for a burst report is the distribution tab. Select it and pull in the new distribution list we just created that has your recipient information and burst values on it. You can change the subject and the message text as well as your from and reply to email for this screen also. From the Properties tab, you'll need to make sure that the enabled box is checked. Same as a regular schedule, the Recurrence tab is where you're telling IntelliPlex where you want and when you want the report to run. You can be as specific as you want to which day of the week and what time you want the report distributed. This is the important one. On the Tasks tab, you'll want to make sure that the boxes are checked for Burst Report and enabled. This is very important since your report will not run without these 2 boxes checked. Go ahead and run your report in order to test it. So you'd right-click on your schedule and say Run, and you'll see the 3 objects that are associated with this report. The report itself, the distribution list, and the schedule. All these are needed for your report to run properly. This is what the entire report would look like if we did not portion it out by burst values and recipients. You can see that the report has multiple user IDs on it, and without bursting it, each person would be receiving more information than they need. By breaking it down by user ID, we'll be sending that report for customers only assigned to that recipient. So each person in the distribution list will receive an email with their specific report. The report will only have the criteria associated in the distribution list in the burst value field. So here you see that Kevin did not receive the entire report. He only received the portion that was specific to him. What I showed you is for sending a scheduled report partitioned out to a recipient's dependent upon a specific value, such as their email ID. The good news is this resolves any issues with them having to filter out their own information and from you having to create multiple reports based on each person's requirements. Our next scenario is for bursting a report and to burst a full report with many values in the first field. And this is being used for reports being sent daily, weekly, or monthly, and reports that get run routinely. This process will only send a report when there's an actual reportable data available. This came about from a customer who was sending a daily schedule report to a sales manager every day for new customer addresses that were entered. He was getting blank reports periodically and couldn't figure out why. It was assumed that there were no new addresses, that the report would not run. Well, it did, and it would send him an empty report. When I learned about burst reporting, I thought I'd won the lottery. I was like, hey, let me go through my scheduled reports. I've added this burst feature, and everyone is much happier with reporting because they only receive the report when there's actual data to review. Just the same as the prior example, first, choose the report you want to send. Since we're sending the entire report, but only when data is available, we will need to add a placeholder or a new data field. After you open your report, via Edit, you will choose the Data tab and then the Data Define tab. Your detail box will pop up and you'll enter your field name as flag or whatever you want to call it. Your criteria can be yes, it can be a capital Y. Again, it's just whatever you make it, make sure that you have a format that matches. So if I wanted to be flag and I wanted to say yip and I wanted to spell it in 4 letters, I'd have to make sure that my format was A4. So it stands for alpha, 3 characters. Again, this is the field that Plex will be looking for in order to only burst when data is available. So if you're looking for a capitalized YES here, remember that when you create your distribution list, that you're also going to have to capitalize it so that it matches and it finds it. Once we've created the new flag column, you'll see that it shows in your available report fields. Make sure it's the first field on your report or the first column. And you can run the report to verify that the yes will populate when there is data. This is what the distribution list is looking for to flag the report to be mailed. If it doesn't find a yes field, then no report will be mailed. We don't want this field to actually show on the report since it's just a placeholder, so you need to hide it. You can do this by right-clicking on the field, choose Visibility, and then Hide. Go ahead, save your report, and close it. Just as we did in the previous process, we will need to create the distribution list. Make sure that your burst value of YES is capitalized and the email recipients are entered. So when I have values in my report, it will send it to my email address. Again, just as we did before, we'll create a schedule, making sure that the burst report and enabled boxes have been checked on the task tab. Now, go ahead and run the report to verify its validity. And the report will be emailed to a recipient only when the data is available. You see, this report has all the results showing, as opposed to our first example where we only wanted specific values. So this resolves any issues where your recipients may have been receiving blank scheduled reports. So let's go ahead and demo what we just saw. I'm in IntelliPlex, doesn't matter whether I'm in Classic or in UX. You can see here that I've got my 2 reports. I've already set my one up with the distribution list and a schedule. So let's go ahead and look at it. I'm going to edit my report. It's going to take IntelliPlex a little while to catch up to me. I've made sure that my first column is my user ID. So it shows in here because that's what my distribution list will be looking for. If I go ahead and run this, these are the values that I'm going to have in my distribution list in order for it to work. So if I don't find anything that matches this, it won't produce the results I'm looking for. So now that I know my report is set up correctly, I'm going to go ahead and close it. I'm going to open or edit my distribution list to take a look at that. And it shows members. So this is my distribution list. It says my burst value is zfarley.cms. And when it finds that value, it's going to send it to this email address. If I want to add a second person, I would add new. I would put my verse value as I found it in my report. I would put the email address that I want it to go to. And I would click OK. So now when I burst this report, it will look for Zach, it'll look for Kevin. If it doesn't find either one of those, it won't send it to anybody else. So in the actual report, you notice there was 4 or 5 different people in there. If I don't match my distribution list to the values in that report, it won't send. I'm going to go ahead and save and close this. And I'm going to go look at my schedule. Go ahead and edit it. There you see under my properties, it's enabled to run. Under my occurrences, it was just set to run once. Under my tasks, it tells me what it is that I am running. If I go ahead and edit it, it would show it to you. So there's my folder, there's the report. There's where it says it's a burst report, and that's where it is enabled. So that's the important part of the task set. If I look at my distributions and I click on that and I edit it, it's showing me that my distribution information is a type of a distribution list versus an email address. It says here is the distribution list that I am looking for, and I matched it to the distribution list here that I created. I've put in my from, I put in my reply, I gave it a subject, and I said it's going to go as an attachment. It's enabled, and I said, go ahead and send it. That's all that's needed to create the schedule. I would go ahead and save and close it. To test it, I would right click on it, and I would force my schedule to run. Since you won't see it because it's an email to me, I kind of skip that part because it takes a second. So to do the second report, if I go in and I edit for a specialized report, so this one I want to be able to send only if I have a flag in there that says, yes, there's data in the report. So there's my Plex customer number. You see my first field is flag. If I run my report, oh, it's set to go to an Excel file. Let's go back into there because you don't really want to see that. And it's down here in the bottom left is my Excel file. So there's my customer part. There's my flag. You notice how it's kind of not as visible as the rest. That's because if I right click on it and I check visibility, it's hidden. If I show it for this demonstration, there's my flag set. I'm going to go ahead and hide it again. If I click on that, it tells me how my flag has been set up. So now that I know that my report has a flag, my flag is in my first column and it's hidden so that I don't receive it. I'm going to go ahead and save that report. I'm going to go to my folder, right click, create new. I'm going to create a new distribution list. My members are going to be my verse value, we know is a capital YES. When I see that burst value, I'm going to send it to myself. And I'm going to send it to Patty because I know she's going to be very interested in this. And then I'm going to hit OK. If it was blank and I've actually wanted to see it, I could say, hey, if I don't find that burst value, let me know, and then maybe I know it's an error. That's really all I need to do here. I've done my members. I'm going to save it and close it. And it's going to say, hey, what's my title, dummy? I'm going to say, yeah, I'm sorry about that. Let me end it. I'm going to name it part list distribution so that I see it in my list. Go ahead and save it. And it's going to, there's my customer type, there's my name, and there's my new distribution list. If I right click on it, I'm going to publish it. If I publish it, everybody can see it versus just me. Now that I've got my distribution list and my report, right click on my report, I'm going to create a schedule. My schedule is an email schedule. And then it comes up with who am I going to send it to? Yeah, I know I did that one wrong. I can give it a from address because it's going to want one. And it's going to want a reply address. And if I was smart, I would have done this in the beginning. So there's my distribution. I've got it set down here so that I know it's going to go as an attachment. I'm going to look at my reoccurrences. It's just set to run once. My properties show that it's enabled. My task, which is going to be the important part, is going to be, it's a burst report. If I look at my distribution, it's set up to go to a distribution list. I'm going to select my distribution list. So those are the ones that are out there created. I know that I want the part list one. It's now set to go to that distribution list. From re2, it's got a subject. It is ready to go. I go ahead and save and close. Saving it for me. And there is my schedule. Again, I can right click my schedule and publish it. And now those are ready to send based off of however that schedule is set to run. Since this is a run only, I would actually have to right click it and run it for that to run. If it was scheduled and a reoccurrence to be sent weekly or daily, it would follow whatever pattern was set up there. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. So you see it's not a difficult or long process to set up. So now I want to get our creative juices flowing and talk about some of the out-of-the-box scenarios. Where would this be useful? You can send reports to customers, suppliers, internal customers, teams, however you need to be able to get information to users. You can use a distribution list to manage sending a report to multiple email addresses rather than maintaining that list of addresses in the schedule. Makes it a little easier to edit and maintain. To give a couple of specific examples, here's one about a company who makes a product that needs to be quality tested. They don't have the capacity themselves, so they send their product to a lab to be tested. The lab was using Plex, and what was happening is the lab was being inundated with phones calls asking if test results were finished. This was slowing down the testing of the product by having to answer all the phone calls. The lab created a burst report out of Plex so that when the results were completed, the report would email the customer, alleviating the need for following up with phone calls. The lab found that the testing response time decreased because they weren't answering the phone, and they were able to get the results out much quicker. This was done by scheduling the report to run every few hours, and the customer was updated a few times every day, depending on when the results were completed. Another example is a Plex customer that purchased raw material specifically for one of their customers. This material was only used in the customer's product that was being produced. Their customer has asked for a weekly inventory of that material. Plex customer service was having to manually run an inventory report every week and send it to the customer. What we did was create the burst report based on the specific raw materials that were purchased specifically to that customer. We then scheduled the report to run weekly. We burst the report using the specialized scenario, as sometimes there was no inventory out there. This freed up the customer service team from having to run a report that may or may not have results, which was basically saving them a mess of time. Key points to remember. When assigning your burst value on a report, you should be making it the first field, which would be the first column of the report. When bursting on a chart, you would be using the second field or the second column. Burst values are added in the distribution list, which is why it's important to create one and not just enter an email on the schedule. From the schedule, you'd have to have a distribution list pulled into it. Make sure your burst report and enabled boxes are checked on your distribution list, or your report's not going to run. And lastly, remember to create a flag field for bursting specialized reports in order that the report only runs when data is available. Can anyone think of a scenario at your facility where having a burst report would help you become more efficient? Feel free to share any ideas with the group, as you may also be helping others with the same issue. If you chime in, please tell us your name and where you're from, or if you got any other questions, we open the floor for you.
This is Russ from Hotspec.
Thanks, Russ. I was just going to remind everyone not to, or to make sure they unmute.
Yeah. So my question is, can you set up a burst report so that it can be an Excel file saved to a specific folder or to an FTP site?
I've not done it to a specific folder or an FTP site. I know that when you create an IntelliPlex report, that you can have it burst as an Excel file. In fact, I just did that one.
Okay. We have several reports that we send out daily and weekly that we have to put them in a folder that is it's transferred by WinSCP into an FTP site for our customer, and that's the only way they'll accept it. They don't want an email.
There is part of the schedule where you can save it to FTP. I am not sure how that works. I've not done it myself, but it's something we could look at.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else got any more questions? Veronica, I'm just going to guess that that's because you did such an awesome job.
Thank you.
Great.
I'm going to turn this over.
Yep, great. So everyone, we're going to do 2 sessions back to back because, as you know, we missed last week. This next session is going to be by Ken Keller. He's going to talk about portal menus. So there are multiple portals out there for customer portal, supplier portal, and employee portal screens. And especially now, in the days of people working more remotely, knowing what those portals can do and how to take advantage of them might save your company some non-value added time. So take a few minutes, if you would, reach out to Jill. We'll be sending that invite out later today. If you're newly joining us today, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Also, check out our YouTube channel. Like Veronica mentioned earlier today, we do post all of our sessions out there. This is probably our 16th or 17th session so far. One of these days I should count them up, but there's lots of good material out there. And we're going to keep doing this every other week as often as we can. We've got a pretty hefty go live schedule this fall. So we're going to keep up as we can. And if you have ideas for sessions, give us a buzz. Thank you, Veronica, for that wonderful session today. Everybody have a good one.
Bye.
Stay safe and healthy.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.